Late last year, at the tail end of it, I had a kidney stone surgery. And in that surgery, I was prescribed painkillers for the pain I was experiencing, opiates more specifically. Um, the first one I had taken was hydrocodone. That was what they gave me. And eventually I ended up going back to the hospital a few days later because I'm still in pain. And because on my chart, when I had went to do a follow-up appointment to show them the stones that I had been collecting in the strainer, on my chart it said I didn't have antibiotics during the surgery, which the person working at the desk thought that that was a big no-no, so I had to go to the emergency room. I didn't go to the emergency room in Kentucky. I went down to Tennessee. I went to Nashville. And I went in there and stayed for like 7 hours or something like that. I was in the waiting room for 4 hours. And it ended up being Christmas Eve. You know, we left at like almost 4 a.m. that morning. But I remember seeing the clock turn, and then it became Christmas Eve while I was in that hospital. And they gave me oxycodone. And if you know anything about opiates, oxycodone is significantly stronger than hydrocodone. Hydrocodone is sort of considered to be like the poor man's oxycodone. You know, the one that people just kind of use if they have to. They can't get a hold of the good stuff. You've probably heard the name OxyContin in the news a number of times. That's an extended release form of oxycodone, but they're more or less the same thing. Probably heard about the company that's getting majorly sued right now because of it, because of the opioid crisis. That's a hot button issue in the United States. Probably other parts of the Western world as well. When I took even a small dose of that medicine, 10 milligrams for example, 20, even at that small dose, before I started abusing it, it just felt like the world was okay. Like having taken it, there was no stress anymore. There was no anxiety anymore. It felt like I had nothing to worry about. That if everything was falling apart around me, which it wasn't, but if it was, I couldn't have felt a thing. There were a lot of negative things going on at the time, and in the last couple months especially. But when I took that medicine, it didn't just make my pain go away, it made everything go away. And all of those things I was worried about, all of those things I was afraid of, all of those things that hurt every day, that kept me awake, that made my heart palpitate, that made me upset, were gone. They were just gone. And I felt safe. Like no matter what happened, being alive was just okay. I never feel like that. I almost never have. I've been depressed in some sense since I was 7 years old. My first suicide attempt, for instance, was when I was 10 years old. And I'm sure a lot of you know the story of first time I committed suicide. I just kept banging my head against the wall again and again, attempting to get some kind of concussion. My parents stopped me, and I thought if I just banged my head against the wall over and over again, that I wouldn't be alive anymore. And I've felt this way for almost as long as I can remember. I thought about suicide when I was 6 years old. Been more than a decade at this point that I felt like this. And when I took that medicine, it was like all of that baggage, all of those feelings, however consistent they've been, were just gone. And it made me want to take more. And so I started taking a lot more. And to be quite honest with you, those were some of the best experiences of my entire life. I would end up throwing up the next morning. Getting off of it was particularly hard with tremors and other things of that sort. I had the resources at my hand, at my disposal, to be able to get over the dope sickness and to get over the withdrawal. But if I kept doing it, I might not have been so fortunate. If I didn't run out when I did, I might not have been so fortunate. But in those times, when I took that medicine, abused that medicine, took more than I should, those were some of the happiest moments I ever had. Just taking it made me feel like a normal person, a person who was okay. But the more that I took, I experienced joy like I had never had before. I was remembering back to the first relationship I had ever had. When I got with him, the night that he had said yes to the advances that I made on him, I was so happy that it was like a state of bliss. And I was shocked because I hadn't been able to pinpoint a time that I had felt like that ever. I didn't know I could be that happy. I didn't think it was possible. And when I took Oxys, it blew any feeling that I've had previously out of the water, including that one, which I thought was the best I could do, which I thought was the height of good feels that I've gotten. Turned out to not be true. I would spend hours just feeling blissful in my bed, just laying back, and even my body felt nice. Everything just felt good. I naturally wanted more. And I think because of that experience I had, I began to understand a lot of why the opioid crisis happens and the kind of people it affects. The working class people who experience constant violence in their own life, whether it be systemic or social, or some combination of the two. Because it's largely low-income people who get prescribed these medicines, and they give them to you pretty immediately. Like, that's what I found to be so weird about my interactions with that second doctor especially, was that the first one she suggested was oxycodone. It's a big deal drug, you know. But it was the first one she suggested. Why is that? I don't have an answer to that question, but if they, for me as a minor, a 17-year-old, suggested that one at first, then what do you think they've done for people with more severe pain, or just people who are older? And what's stopping them from getting hooked on it the way that I did? I don't have any more. I'm off of it now. The withdrawals are gone. But if I kept using those drugs, we could be seeing a very different star than what we're seeing now. I've been sad for a long time. And I don't ever really see it stopping. Like, they always say, you know, we're gonna get to a world where everything's better and things are just gonna be okay. As far as the eye can see, it looks like things are just getting worse. And irreversibly so. Not just for me, but for everybody. And it's very hard to have optimism in a world like that, of any kind. And so, for as long as I've felt this way, for as early as I've tried to take my own life, it seems unlikely that I'll ever feel any way different. People online, you know, they try to act like they know better than you. Like, they have the authority to tell you how you're going to feel in 5 years from now. As if they even have the faintest idea. Without even knowing you. It's just words on a screen. They're just YouTube videos. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel better 5 years from now. I don't think there's any feeling better for me. My hair has been falling out a lot lately. That's why I got it cut. Because part of why at least. There's another much more, I guess you could say, strategic reason. It's been falling out a lot. I've been getting a lot more white hair. And gray hair, which I've always had to some degree or another, but most likely it's due to stress from what's been communicated to me on a professional level. That's fun. And my heart rate has been shooting through the roof for the last couple weeks. I mean, it's been something else, like close to falling down heart rate is how bad it's been, all the time. It's a reaction to stress. I don't see where it comes from. This is just the way that I am.